and competing.
Hello and welcome. I am your host, the best podcast host in the universe, Steve Cully. And with me today, a very, I would say he's more of an enigma, but he is a charismatic enigma. Very, very high IQ guy, smart guy, insightful, former teammate. Haven't seen him in 20 plus years. Mr. Laban Marsh. Thank you for joining the Husky Talk today.
Hey, my pleasure. I love Husky Talk. And in our household, when both my wife and I are former Husky athletes, uh, we have 4 kids. And so they're all Huskied out as well. So, yeah, I'm excited to be with you. Teammates are extremely special to me. And as I know they are to you as well. And so it'll be good to catch up with you, brother. And
Yeah,
forward to
yeah. It's amazing how it worked out, and I've gotten to talk to some of your teammates that I didn't really get a chance to play with or know,
yeah.
and I think you were a different breed, and we'll get into that. But I know that you're originally from Florida, right?
No, no,
You're
I grew
not.
up I
Okay.
grew up in Western Pennsylvania.
Oh, that's right. You're a PA. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, PA. So Coach Rapone, being from Newcastle with Nicky the Fish and Mark Campoli.
Can't beat.
Yeah, so I of course lived with offensive linemen, and so I heard all your stories and got to stay in touch with all those guys. So yeah, Western PA. Born,
Western PA. Okay.
yeah.
And you always had speed, athleticism, talent. Did that was that with you, since you were a kid? Was that something that you always worked on? Like you went to speed camps, did plyometrics, work all that different things.
It's really interesting, and I appreciate you asking that because as I reflect on my athletic career, and having kids now, like my son's 13, and when he played baseball, he was fast. But I don't remember as a kid anybody ever saying, "Wow, he's fast." And I don't think that I was. I mean, naturally, I think the Lord gifted me with some talent, but I worked my tail off. I mean, in the weight room as young as I started really lifting, I think eighth or ninth grade, and I hadn't hit a growth spurt until more of my sophomore, junior year. Um, and back in the early to mid 90s, they certainly didn't have YouTube and the internet like we know it today.
No,
All these
nothing like
Instagram
that.
posts about different plyometric drills and all that. And so it wasn't until I got into my senior year of high school that I realized I had some speed that could maybe take me somewhere. And so, like in high school, I ran a 4:44 in the 40, which certainly helped.
Yeah,
But
that'll help.
there are a lot of people as a defensive back. It was funny because my coach would get recruiting calls, and with my times, and I had a 40-inch vertical. Um,
Jeez.
so we had one of the funniest stories one of my coaches said was there was a school that was recruiting me that only had one black coach on staff. And so they sent him up to recruit me because from my numbers and, they didn't have film
They
like they did back
they
then.
thought you were they thought you
They
were a
thought I was
brother.
black. Well, Laban Marsh. I mean, Laban
That's
is not a
funny.
real common name. Um, and so, yeah, the coaches laughed because when the coach asked to see me and kind of explain, he's like, wait, he's white?
He's a
So,
little white kid, yeah.
yeah, but it was, yeah, back in the 90s. I mean, I worked my tail off in just traditional weights. I got into, the Olympic lifts for quickness and speed, but that was something that I think, my mom was kind of fast, wasn't a major athlete, but I just worked really hard. And then having kids that have the same poor running form that I had, it's kind of a strange thing to think where that all came from.
Who
You know,
was your mentor, would you say, growing up? Like, who pushed you towards football, track? Who encouraged you to train as hard as you did? Because somebody obviously put it into your head that, okay, this guy's got talent. This guy's got ability. This guy's got a chance to go somewhere with it and be something special, there has to be somebody that saw it in you and cultivated it.
Yeah, and honestly, I still have the good fortune of working closely with that individual, which is Joe Sanford. I mean, he was an outstanding athlete himself, played for a short time with Green Bay Packers. He was a great coach. He was my pole vault coach, but he also taught psychology in the school. And that's part of the reason I pursued a degree in psychology at UConn,
Oh,
is I
wow.
realized how influential his knowledge of athletics and the combination of sports psychology. Um, it was his influence, in fact, because he was my pole vault coach, and he understood that in track and field, it's really hard to earn a scholarship. Now, for girls in Title IX, like one of my high school girls that I coached just won the Big East championship yesterday for UConn. She's a,
Wow.
I mean, so that was where it came full circle. But the same coach that coached me coached her is the
Yeah.
who sat down with me when I was trying to make a decision on schools, and he said, I'm going to be honest with you. And our family was not in a position financially to pick up whatever I could not acquire
Yeah.
scholarship. And so he said, hey, I know you love track and field, but if you need money, you're going to
There's no.
go the football route.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we'll get into, the Miami guys where football in Miami was suspended. So they had track scholarship guys that were playing football. Like,
Football. Yes.
so if you watch that 30 for 30
That's
with
how they worked around it.
2001 team, yeah, and there it leads into the multi sports, because that coach who had such an influence in Joe Stanford, I mean, he was a football player, he coached track and field, and he encouraged that to play both. And I want to see more linemen throwing shot and disc and hammer.
Yeah.
The footwork that's required is huge.
It translates over.
Oh,
Yeah.
exactly. It helps out. So Joe Sanford was somebody who has, and to this day, he's my pole vault coach. I assisted him for 8 years before I broke off to my daughter's school where I coach the pole vault now. And that was where he was by far the most important mentor aside from my father and my brothers.
Did he coach you in football?
He did not, and I
Oh,
would
wow.
love to have played for him.
Yeah.
But the way that, he was coaching at another school at the time that I was playing football at the high school where he coached track.
But he was a football guy.
He was a football guy. He still is. I mean, he still kind of oversees film for some of our high school teams that need eyeballs because he's so knowledgeable. And it's that sickness, that sickness that we all have playing football. Like it's hard to suppress the passion. And
you can't replace it.
No, it's irreplaceable. And I coached 1 year 8th grade football, and my intensity was way too far for
you
that.
You were at a 10.
Yeah, and the kids were like 4 and 5, and
Yeah.
we had more losses than I think I had my entire high school career. So I'm like, I just had a hard time with it. Yeah.
I was gonna ask you. So we ended up having concussions. When did they first start? Do you
Yeah.
recall? Because like when you and I played, it was called getting your bell rung.
Right.
And nobody really took it as seriously as they do now. You'd be woozy, you'd walk around, you may lose consciousness for a second, but you'd be right back out on the field. And those were undiagnosed concussions that I think we all suffered. So when would you say the first major concussion you had?
Yeah.
And when you noticed, maybe you had a minor one and something was wrong?
Yeah. So, and that's a great question. And
Well,
again,
that's because I'm the best podcast host in the
it's
universe.
clearly, and I think that's where in football, especially when I talk to parents, because I've had parents reach out to me and kids that aren't sure about it, the game is far more safe now.
It is.
And
Yeah.
I can understand, right? It was a bell rung. So in high school, my junior year, I had suffered 3 during the season,
Oh
which,
my God.
yeah, you wouldn't even be able to go back after one. And so it was at the end of my middle of my junior year. And luckily in Erie, Pennsylvania, we had a guy who had intellectual property on the outer shell that Don Beebe and Mark
Yeah,
Kelly
that they wore.
Right. So that was where my junior year, they manufactured one for me for my high school.
Correct.
I had to wear that my senior year, still suffered 2 more. So I remember Skip Holt sitting in my living room and, for TV interview, they wanted my helmet there. Well, my helmet had a pro cap. And so my mom made sure to ask Skip, like, is it okay if he wears this? Because at the time, Rydell was saying, nope, it eliminates any manufacturer's warranty if you add anything to the helmet. And there was Velcro on the helmet and then the shell stuck on top. But I wore one for the Big 33 game. They made me one special. They made me one for UConn, both practice and games. So what's crazy is that, like right now, although in practices, they wear that extra bubble, right? So it's kind of like we were ahead of our time with that. And it really prolonged my career. The question becomes, was that a good thing? So I had 5 concussions coming out of high school. And then I realized,
Jesus.
hey, I had a concussion when I was like a 6-year-old wrestling. I slammed my head on the mat, felt sick to my stomach, had no appetite the rest of the day. And I didn't know it at the time. So then having them, I realized, wow, I had one when I was real young. Nothing that had a major effect, but I just knew I had one. And then in high school and college, even into college, I think I finished having 3. And there were times like Colgate was the first game my junior year. I had it was 4th and long. They would drop back for a pass, Ryan Venna.
I love Ryan Venna. That was the one at Colgate, right?
Yes. And
I was there. Yeah.
I separated his shoulder on the play. And I think Lou Wagner recovered the fumble. We get the ball back and we win. And my dad was listening to the radio telecast the whole time. And they interviewed me afterwards because I had the game-saving sack ever. Yeah. And my dad's like, dude, as soon as I heard you talking, I knew you were concussed. Now, I never reported that to Bob. He might be hearing this for the first time, but that was the first game of it was my sophomore year, 98. It was a big 98 season. So the first game of my sophomore year, and I knew if I said anything, I don't know how long I'll be out or if I'll be.
You don't, yeah.
So
it was so different back then.
It was so different and you mentioned like ever been knocked out. Part of the problem when you get knocked out, it's an easy diagnosis. You're out of the game.
You lose consciousness, right?
Right. But I never got knocked out. And so
right.
That is now you're exposed to second impact syndrome, And so with all of that, I found it, as many do, hard to focus on things. There are just so many factors that go along with it. And so
now you noticed the difference immediately.
Immediately. And it would take weeks to get that fogginess out. I mean, especially sitting in class, I remember I'd have to sit. If I tried to pick my head up, it just would be, thriving, just a pounding headache.
Did the light bother you?
Light, it did. And that was now, I think more so. I had LASIK eye surgery, so I think I'm more sensitive now. But light sensitivity was a big thing. And I'm thankful I don't have headaches, but I have things that I do in life in my calendar. Like even when we were meeting today, I have to put that in my calendar. Otherwise, if I forget, the amount of stress and angst that comes upon me can be unbearable. And I think that's where on the mental health side, the stress and anxiety. And then I started to study a lot of it, right? Robert Cantu, Ann McKee up at Boston University. So in 2009, I became a part of Boston University's study of encephalopathy. So I am a brain and brainstem donor.
You're donating it. Wow.
Yeah. And now it's interesting because when I first signed up, they did annual interviews. And the annual interviews were very similar to concussion protocol.
Just trying to see
where you're at.
Your recall, see what you,
Yeah. But it got to the point, Steve, where they wanted to do it annually. Like if it was in March that you did your first interview, and when it came time for Boston to start calling me, like I would ignore the calls. It stressed me out because they want you in a dark room and then they give you like a list of 18 items.
Yeah.
And ask you to repeat them back.
You got to remember them. Yeah.
And you know what it does? I'm like, exactly what this is doing. And it's putting me in a bad spot. It's stressing me out. I know I can't remember it. I'm not going to be able to remember it. So I just told them, hey, I'm happy to donate my brain and brainstem, but I cannot do these annual tests because I angst even just trying to make the phone call.
it's false. It's going to falsify the results as
Right.
well because it's not
Right.
a
And
safe
that's where,
system.
no, and that's where it's kind of like the concussions. Like you knew they were going to ask you what you ate for breakfast, and I never ate breakfast, but I just told them eggs over easy and bacon. It's like anything else. You find that loophole where okay, they're not going to ask me any more questions if I just get right at it.
So that's amazing. So Skip knew you had 3 pretty good concussions in high school.
Five, yeah. I
You
mean,
you had
three, three
you
is a,
had 5,
yeah,
and
three
then
is a
the
junior.
3 in college.
Yeah.
Okay, so Skip
So I
knew
was,
this.
yeah, and what's crazy is after my third in college, which made it 8 from football specifically, and Randy was the head coach at the time. They required me. I don't know. I don't think they thought I was faking, but it wasn't as serious as it is now. So they required, in order for me to retain my full football scholarship,
I remember this.
they wanted a neurologist letter to say that it's not healthy for me to continue to play after 8 concussions. I mean, it's
Was it the Kentucky game?
that was my. And what's crazy, Steve, is Kentucky is the only other school that recruited me, but they recruited me as a wide receiver. And when I went down on my visit, Tim Couch was their quarterback at the time. So I'm thinking, this is great. Well, as soon as I go down on my visit, they hire Curry, or they fire Bill Curry, I think it was. Yeah, they fired Curry and they brought in Hal Mummy, who didn't have me on his recruiting list. So they were off the list, and I went. Nick Rapone came up, recruited me from Newcastle. I took a visit, met Nick Cannon for the first time, and I think I committed
Nicky the Fish.
that weekend. Matt Fezchek was my host because he was he played.
That he was my host too.
It was he. Yeah.
He's got to
So,
have 100% record for
yeah.
recruits.
Oh, yeah. And I remember we were in the elevator, and he says to me, he's like, hey, I don't know what you want to do tonight, but Coach Rapone just says, do whatever it takes to get you here. And I was going, so he didn't have to do anything special. But the camaraderie, the guys, and honestly, I know for a lot of us, we were on that verge of 1AA going to 1A. And all of us were 1A players, but a lot of us wanted to play right away. So, like, I got to play as a true freshman with Jamar Wilkins. And, I mean, it was special. It really was a special time. And I'm thrilled up and down. Guys that when I came in, I mean, just outstanding leaders, that just really bought into the program, and you had to have pride to play. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's really why I like talking to your group, the group before us, because we always heard that you guys were the true badasses. Like you guys didn't take shit from anyone. You guys were the toughest of the bunch. And I don't think we necessarily were early on. So hearing stories of guys, like I remember coming in and I saw Ron Gamble and Chad Cook. I wanted to leave the locker room.
Cookie. Oh,
I'm like this guy looks like he's 40 and I think he's going to kill me. I'd rather not have to block him, please. And
yeah.
then Gamble was a big dude. And I mean, Jamar, like you guys had some real dudes.
Yeah.
So, 97 was your first year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fall of 97.
So 98 going in, did you know that you had a chance to do something special, or you really didn't know how good you were going to be?
No, we definitely knew. And like any football team, like who's your quarterback? And Shane Stafford, I mean, Pup, and he's a Pennsylvania guy. So
He
of course,
is.
he and Gooch. I remember walking in and Gooch had his pit bulls, and I'm like, what is going on here? The locker room could be scary. I love offense and defense. If any offensive guy tried to come through the defense area, they get tackled. But yeah, there were some guys, and Lou Wagner was fresh out of like the Army. I think he came to school like 23, 24 years old as a full grown man. Like,
yes,
dude,
I heard about him. Yeah,
and you report as a freshman, so you see all these freshmen. You're like, all right, there's some big guys, and then the upperclassmen come in, and you're like,
holy.
We're all on the same field together? Like,
yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. So it is. I mean, it was a eye opener to me, just the size of guys. And so you knew you had to bring it every time. And Carl Bond used to call me weak link.
Shank. Yep.
And listen, I'll tell you right now, if you fold to them talking trash, and I got it all the time with my pro cap, right? I had a
Oh,
guy,
I know you did. I know you
across the
did.
way, like, hey, why do they make you wear that? I'm like, because I hit too hard. You know what I mean? Like you come up with all sorts of trash talk. But Carl Bond would say, "Oh, you're the weak link," and I knew I could hold my own, but I don't mind him razzing me. And
No, it makes
gotta
you
step
better.
up. You have to step up. And but we had Jordan Younger in the backfield.
Yeah, JY. Yep.
A visceral mind. Like I feel like just a ball hawk, right? But I couldn't remember the plays all the time. I didn't know necessarily my assignment, but if that ball's in the air, I'm going to go get it. But
Yeah.
JY, I knew from the start he would be a coach, just because he understood all 11 positions in the back. He knew what offense was. I mean, it was fun to play with that level of.
He was your quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 100%. As a corner, he was the guy that would run the show, though. He'd be calling out the calls, so I knew what to do. And I kind of got bounced around, and you know how injuries go. We had Clint Hamilton was a captain for us, and he went down in that Delaware game with a concussion, unfortunately. And so I had to step up at free safety. Well, right before half, I had an interception from Matt Nagy,
Yeah.
quarterback of Delaware, who has a little significance these days for the
Yeah,
Chiefs.
he's been a head coach. He's played. He's done all right.
Yeah. So I mean, to have been exposed and not only compete with guys like that, but I didn't even realize it until after he got hired by Brett Veach that we played him at Delaware, and when I went back and watched film, that's the guy I picked off in the end zone. So you did play, and I think the other thing about UConn football, we all had a chip on our shoulder because I was gonna go to Kentucky, and other guys were gonna go to either Miami or
Well,
something.
yeah, and it was a basketball school. I remember, and
Yeah.
it drove me nuts. And I think we definitely did have a chip on our shoulder, and especially you guys. And it was the first time that UConn had won double digits. The
Yeah.
first time that UConn had went to the playoffs. I mean, you guys put UConn on the map that year. I mean, that year was so special.
It really.
And yeah, and like you said, um, were you familiar with UConn football before you committed and went there? Like, because Penn State. I mean,
Yeah.
you got Bloomsburg, you got some great D2 schools. Like, because I when I was recruited by UConn, I was like, UConn's got a football team. Like, I didn't know,
Yeah.
and that's why I'm curious. Is like, were you obviously hesitant because you were being recruited by an SEC school, and now you're going down to UConn, who was FCS. So, what were your thoughts about UConn initially?
So, and I know that even when I think about this, because if an athlete said this to me today, I'd kind of think they were off their rocker. But I wanted to play two sports, dude. Like I
You
really
wanted to be a two-sport college
I
athlete.
wanted to. And
Yeah.
honestly, football was, I would say, my number one passion. I love track, but football, it's just that you grow up as a kid wanting to be in the NFL. And so that was my ultimate goal. And people would laugh at me, but I didn't care. I just worked harder. In fact, Mark Campoli, I signed a paper that said I will be in the NFL one day. He held it in his wallet for a minute or two, but I didn't care if I was going to let you down. My goal was to be in the NFL. And I thought, and I think I had mentioned this to you, if I didn't have track and field to fall back on after my concussions, I don't even know what that would have spun me into, depression and things like that. So UConn, I knew the football program was growing from 1AA to 1A.
You believed in Skip Holtz.
I believe. Oh, and you knew because Lou was coming to spring games, and so you got exposure, and you knew Skip with his, pedigree, what you were going to get, and that he was growing the program. Now, I will say this: on that same recruiting trip where he saw my pro cap, the question my parents were curious about, and I think every student athlete is curious about this, like, Skip, are you going to be there for my 4 years? Like, what?
Yeah, they all want to know.
Is this a ladder? You know what I mean? Are you
Yeah.
just this stepping stone? And this is what he said. And this is what terrified me the night before Georgia Southern. He said to me, the only reason I would ever leave UConn
Would
is
be the
if I
coach.
had a chance to coach with my father
My
again.
dad, yeah.
And so we're all 1998 in the hotel room before Georgia Southern watching ESPN, and they have a breaking news. Lou Holtz has accepted the job at South
South
Carolina.
Carolina.
And now we're going out the next day to play Georgia Southern.
And that changed everything.
I knew right away
Yeah.
announced that. Like, dude, and we were 10-2 going into the game against Georgia Southern, which made us 10-3. But I mean, we were 10-2, and like
You beat the national champions twice.
Twice.
I was at both. I was at both games.
Yeah, and the home game, if you remember, Butchie. Oh, I feel so bad. Butchie pulled both of his hamstrings in the celebration pile.
Oh my God!
It's not funny. But I mean, that Jordan made a huge play, and I think I even threw him to the ground, and that's kind of what started that whole pile. But I remember Butchie came up limp with 2 pulled hamstrings from that celebration pile when we beat him at home, and then we beat him at their place. And then they end up, I think, beating Georgia Southern
They
for
did.
the title. So,
did you think they were better than Georgia Southern?
Dude, but Georgia Southern ran that wing,
that triple wing offense, yeah.
And Coach Rapone and Jordan and I talked about this somewhat recently. I don't like that was a game plan from Nick Rapone. Like safeties were covering quarterback, and corners were covering the quarterback, and the corners or the safeties would come back. It was totally different than
he didn't know how to
we'd
scheme
ever
it.
run. And you didn't know where the ball was going. They handed off, and I mean they ran it down our throats, and we didn't have a chance. But it definitely took the wind out of our sails, knowing that Lou was taking a job at South Carolina, and Skip, in all likelihood, was following him.
Right. But I mean, overall that year, I mean, you had a great year.
Yeah, we did.
You played corner. You played safety.
Yeah.
Did you return kicks at all?
I did. Well,
I thought I remembered you.
Time. Yeah, Jordan was mostly returning the punts. We would have 2 men back because that was when I separated my right shoulder my freshman year against Yale when they kicked it to JY. So I went up and took on a 300-pound blocker at Yale and blew out my shoulder. So, but yeah, it was an exciting year. And as you grow the momentum, and you feel like, hey, we're going to make the playoffs. We're going to make a run at this. It was the first time like we all missed Thanksgiving dinner because we had to be at campus. I mean, those were,
the first playoff win against Hampton.
It was huge. Yeah. It was just so exciting to be a part of that. And I still have my jersey framed with that, centennial patch, it was just a really special time. And
you had a great group.
In 99 was when the men won their first hoops title, and I was in Campbell for that. I mean, I feel like
that put UConn
started that,
on another level.
Yeah. I mean, it's been exciting.
They had a record number of applications, just because of that. Football and the soccer team did well. The women's soccer team did well.
My wife played field hockey. I mean,
they were always good. Lacrosse was good. I mean, UConn was real. I always tell people, UConn really was a jock school. I mean, it was a jock school 100%.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think the thing about that mentality is everybody's trying to make everybody better. How good the basketball team is, and so you wanted the football team to start to back up in the ranks. And as soon as the Whalers were out of Connecticut, man, I mean, UConn is all they've got. And so that is something special to have an entire state, as small as it might be, to just be
behind you.
Penn State, we've got in Pennsylvania, you got Pitt, Penn State rivalry, and a bunch of other schools.
West Virginia too.
Villanova, Temple. I mean, you've got all. Yeah. So Connecticut was just a special place. It really was. Yeah.
So what would you say drew you to psychology? Because psychology is a very difficult major. I mean, there is a lot of work that goes into it. And the only reason I say that is because I took 2 psych classes because they were required. I took the Psych 101 and the other one, and it was in the big lecture hall. And, the only thing I remember about it was they were talking about Pavlov's dog and ringing the bell and the dog came and that. But And I've taken a greater interest in psychology now,
Yeah.
because of my own issues. What like, because I know some people at UConn, they would say they majored in graduation, which was like sociology or
Yeah.
HTFS or whatever.
Yeah.
What drew you to psychology, or did you just take it because you thought it would be the easiest way for you to graduate? Honestly,
No, it's a great question. And my uncle locally, and he was a major influence in my life too, but he was a dentist. So I actually went to school thinking I was going to be pre-dentistry.
oh
So
wow,
my freshman year, I signed up for chemistry and biology. And then,
oh my god,
but listen, I ended up playing like as a true freshman,
yeah, I know.
trying to handle these. I think I got D's in both. And I'm like, hey, this is,
Those are the two hardest courses. Yeah,
I'm not,
everyone took chemistry and bio in the summer. That
yeah,
was the only way we could pass.
it was miserable. So I knew immediately that, hey, this dentistry thing isn't going to happen. But so going back to that mentor of mine, Joe Sanford, he taught me psychology. And I'm like, I really need to understand. And then I understood the sports psychology. And so as I got towards graduate courses, I did take a couple grad classes in the sociology of sports, sports psychology, all of those things. And I've realized now how important it has been for my business and sales and
Oh,
really
it is for sure.
understanding people. So,
Yes.
and I was actually going to go to a local school to finish one of my classes from UConn. And I said, well, I want to get into, some business classes and maybe get a master's degree. And they're like, well, what's your undergrad? I said, psychology, not really the same. And she said, actually, we recommend business students minor in psychology because of how helpful it is in business understanding
It
people.
absolutely is,
Yeah.
because you
So,
need to know the personality types you're dealing with. You need to know when to push, when to pull back. You need to know type A, type B, because understanding who you're dealing with. I mean, you can walk into a room if you're good with psychology.
yeah.
Like because I work in sales. Really within 5 minutes if you got a chance or not.
Yeah.
And you know what it's going to take.
And the DISC profiling, the disc profiling, and I'm a D personality, so I'm short and to the point. But when you understand that, you can realize it from a handshake or a greeting what the type of personality they are. If somebody's coming up giving you a hug, they're more of an S personality. So seeing a lot of that and understanding it right off the bat, because you'll get offended if you don't understand that a D personality just likes to be direct. I don't need your whole sob story. I just want, but
They want to get to the point. Yeah,
so you got to
you're
kind of,
right.
I've said like a chameleon. You have to learn to adapt. And if you've got somebody that likes to talk about their grandkids, you better be willing to question them and not just get right to the point of business because you'll lose them. So yeah, the psychology I turned to not because I thought it was easier, although I knew it would
You
be much easier than pre-dentistry.
you were interested. You were legitimately
Sincerely.
interested, and
Yeah,
you knew it was to help you down the line.
right. And with the sports, I thought I was going to get into strength and conditioning. Aaron Hillman, who when I first came in, he ended up leaving for Notre Dame. But after I graduated, I stayed in touch with him because I was going to get a job with the Steelers. And then when he said, well, you'll basically be working for sneakers, I'm like, yeah, I need to start making money. So it all came from just really the sports psychology side of it and helping athletes, really helping myself, kind of like what you said. I didn't do a lot of reading in high school or college, but afterwards,
Yeah,
the self-help books, if you will, but just understanding the importance of psychology and being in the right mindset. And now, especially these days with athletes and the mental health that is actually thankfully
it's
talking
yeah.
about it. I mean, was something, especially for us tough football players, like, dude, I don't want to hear you're struggling with something or you start breaking down crying. It's like, hey, dude, my 4 kids know I get emotional and I'm not afraid to cry in front of my kids. But I know some of this stems from, the trauma of, head trauma and stuff. And it's like, I
Absolutely.
understand physiological reasons why, but I know there's a few things that'll just like make me start crying like a baby. It's
That'll
usually
trigger you.
it's empathy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um and that's where I just think, especially for men, right? It's okay. I mean, that is the hardest part. And again, you've had coaches that's toughen up. What I mean, I understand all that, but there is more to life than wins and losses. And when you're struggling and you just need somebody for a little encouragement, I think that's where I've tried to become kind of the ultimate hype man. And it's not blowing smoke; it's just encouraging people because so often that's what they're missing.
Well, you have such a positive attitude and such a positive outlook, and that makes a difference, and it resonates especially with the younger kids. Um, let's talk a little bit about 1999. Randy Edsall comes in, and you got a team that was 10-3. There was no reason that we couldn't have competed for the A10, and it was a disappointment. Um, the way that he came in, I heard, and I've repaired my relationship with him now, but I heard that he, like, chucked the rings at people when he first came in, at the first team meeting when he introduced himself. Like, he came in with a powerhouse attitude,
I, the, the
or an ego, I should
the
say.
statement that just I couldn't get beyond was he said, "I don't care what you did under Skip Holtz."
Yes. Yep. Roy Hopkins
Verbatim.
told me that too.
And it's
Yep.
like, hold on, dude, what are you talking about? Like he's from Eastern PA, he's from York, Pennsylvania. So I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, he probably knows I played in the Big 33. That's a kind of a big deal in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And it's like I led the team with interceptions as a true freshman, with 3. And it's like, how do you not know the stats? If you're coming in and you're buying a business, like, you want to know what is their history of business, how do they operate, who are their salespeople, and now in hindsight, I realized starting a business and having some of that old dead weight.
Well, he wanted to run people off,
Right.
which he ran some people off he shouldn't have.
I mean, you got Hoffman, who was a backup quarterback to Pup, ready to go in his 5th year, and he's like, we don't.
Yeah, he just ruined Hoffman's head.
Yeah, well, and here was my thing because I was raised to respect your elders, and I've learned after a number of coaches and their antics, Sandusky for one. Hey, you respect. Or
Yep.
you earn the respect. You aren't just giving it because you're older than me or in charge of me. And so one of the things that got me with Randy was when he came in that same meeting, he threatened as far as, hey, if you miss a winter workout, there's punishment. I love to run. I got new sneakers.
Oh, the 6 a.m. workouts, right.
Right. Now listen, and this is the reason I don't respect Randy is before I had that last concussion after the game at Kentucky.
I remember.
I had a meeting and he looked me in the eyes and said, "You don't work hard."
I remember.
Athlete, but rolling it back, the reason that made me angry is that we had a winter workout, and mind you, I was a 2-sport athlete, so I was in track season.
You were doing track, right?
While we had winter workouts, and Nick Cannon, Fish, was my college roommate, and I still to this day don't like setting alarms. I'm not good at getting up, but he was my alarm guy. So,
Nicky the Fish.
Nicky the Fish. So he was sick one night, and Bob somehow gave him the blessing to miss the winter workout, which I don't know if I didn't know that, didn't remember, whatever. But
you must have had to be on your deathbed to get a permission to miss a winter workout.
Exactly. So I'm laying in bed, right, ready for the winter workout, and I wake up and it's daylight. Now, that
you must have been in full panic.
I panicked immediately, and I knew the rule was if you miss a workout, take the day off.
That's exactly what Roy told me.
Entire day off.
Roy said, "Don't show up.
You're still getting in trouble." But I was like, I had slept in so late, and Fish was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Bro, you're killing me here, dude. I'm late for this workout." Now, here's what got me. So that was like a Monday or Tuesday, and usually you did the 2 days of penalty the following day, which would have been Thursday, Friday.
Right, that was the schedule.
But Randy knew that I was running track, and I had a meet at Boston University on Saturday morning.
Oh,
so I think it was Anthony Carter, Jordan Younger,
it was AC,
myself,
JY.
and who else? we had this, I think it was a 5 a.m. workout.
Oh my
I mean, he made it
God.
on a Saturday morning because he thought most guys are going out on Friday
On
night.
a Saturday morning?
But here was my thing. I had a track meet that afternoon where I was supposed to pole vault and run the 60.
He didn't
So
give a shit.
we get in the line, right? We get on the track. It's a 200-meter indoor track. And he says, we're running the Indian drill.
Oh,
And he's got his shoes laced up like he's ready to go. So we start running. And then he'd say hit, and the guy in the back has to run to the front.
I hate that. Yeah.
I believe we were probably at lap like 25, right?
Oh my God. On the 200 meter thing?
And I'm not exaggerating. And guys started dropping off. Like they were just dying, so they were dropping off to the side. Well, I had too much pride. So I'm on Randy's heels, right? And
You were giving it to him.
We were probably running and I'm looking at the clock every time I hit the 200 because I know our bus is about to leave and my track coach is about to walk in and wonder, what are you doing on a Saturday morning running, because I didn't tell.
Oh my God.
So
that's unbelievable.
I see that they're getting close to get like the time when everybody's supposed to report for the bus. So I decide to pass Randy. Like I've been sitting on his heels waiting for him to just tell us to be done. So I pass him. And as soon as
Wait a second. How long did this go on for, this Indian run?
It was at least an hour and a half. It was absurd.
This was 90 minutes?
I said,
my God.
And you're not sprinting the laps, you're jogging them. It had to be anywhere from 30 to 40 laps on the 200-meter track. And it seems outrageous, but it was insane. And so I passed him just to get out in front. And as soon as I passed him, he stopped. You know what I mean? So it was like he was just waiting for me to take the lead to stop, which I would have realized in hindsight. But I passed him. He stopped. So when I came back around, he's like, you're done. Well, now, and then the track coaches walk in while we're kind of finishing up. And he's like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, oh, well, I missed one of my winter workouts. And so I didn't even get to sprint that day at Boston. My shins hurt.
You must have been dead. Yeah. 90 minutes.
It was brutal. It was, and he wasn't joking.
And a good pace, I'm sure. I'm sure it was jogging, but it was probably a good pace.
Yeah. I mean, it was on him. He was running it, and I just stayed on his heels to the point. The only reason I passed him is because I knew the track coaches and my teammates were showing up to get ready to leave. And it was the wildest thing ever. But yeah, I still blame that on Nick Cannon. He missed that stinking alarm clock.
That's all right. We can blame Nicky the Fish.
Yeah.
We'll call him out. Nicky the Fish, avid listener.
But listen, Cully,
it's your fault.
I'm telling you, but that right there is why I don't respect Randy, because he knows I worked hard. He knows.
Well, he didn't care because you were a skip guy.
I know, but that's what it's like.
I think that's what it was.
Just say that. Listen, I just, because I don't know if you were there and remember, like he praised Jordan Younger and I because I ran a 4.3240 on our pro day, and I
remember that
vertical. So he's like, hey, these are two of the top guys in the country, and it's like. And then 4 months later, he's like, you don't work hard? Yeah, I'm just naturally gifted with that speed and leaping ability. I mean, if you saw me in the weight room, you knew.
No, your numbers were, for your weight, outstanding.
Wild Bill, we were overachievers. They had the overachiever workout on the board. And, but yeah, even my first day, I remember I set a goal to do 50 pull-ups, and I crashed at 51. And what that was for me, consecutive, all the way full extension. But that was the mindset. And I'm thinking, like, what if I would have said I could get 60? Would I got 61? And so even that first day when we as freshmen had to test the different, dips, pull-ups, all that, I got 51, and I'm like, I never would have thought I could get 50, but that was my goal. So you better start elevating your goals, even if you miss them, So
did you like Mike Golden?
So no, just simply, and only because, as soon as you look at him, and I still feel this way about a lot of coaches these days. If I look at you and know there's no way you ever did what you're telling me to do, I got a hard time digging deep for you.
You have respect for the guys who played and coach. They've been there.
Jerry Martin, you can't. I mean, Jerry
Martin
are night and day. I mean, or Hootie. I mean,
I loved Hootie. Yep.
So I I thought Mike Golden was a nice guy, but he was trying to be buddy with everybody, it seemed. And that happens a lot when you're coming in new. He was a nice enough guy, but he liked to poke fun at me, which is okay. But it was one of those things like, dude, you're supposed to be encouraging me, getting me stronger and faster. And you're just, poking jokes like my teammates, and my teammates can do that, but not you, an authority who's supposed to be encouraging me. You know what I mean? And especially knowing that there's no way you could bench more than me back in your day or any of that stuff. So
what about, because I'm sure you had individual meetings with Randy. I mean, you usually meet after spring ball. I think you would meet before the season. Did you have individual meetings with him, and how did those go?
So here's the other thing. When he first came on board, it was the winter, dead of winter.
I remember. Yep.
I was the only football player there because I ran track. So Greg Smoot came up on a recruiting trip, and I was his host because I was the only.
You hosted Smoot.
I hosted Smoot. Yeah. So I do take credit for getting him there. I don't know if he would say it was me that got him there. But yeah, I mean, and so that was where I thought, hey, this is going to be a great relationship. He knows I'm here working my tail off. But if you remember, he would always say in winter workouts, I want you guys to compete. I want you to compete. And the frustrating thing was like, hey, on Saturday mornings when most guys are recovering from a Friday night out, I'm competing against Santana Moss, Willis McGahee, Philip Buchanan, Andre Johnson.
You never stopped competing.
Exactly. And in fact, I competed like more intensely while everybody was in their off season.
Yeah.
And that's where the multi-sport thing.
He didn't appreciate that.
And yeah, it's not that I didn't love it as much as football. I just love the roundedness of being.
When you were talented. I mean, why waste it? Why waste it when you can run like you can run and not do it?
And I think the only reason Randy let me continue was that he saw I was scoring points. It's not like I just wanted to run track. Like I won the Big East in the pole vault, the 60-meter dash. So I got 20 points. We didn't win the Big East as a team that year, but we were pretty doggone close. So the fact that I was not only just running to run, I was actually contributing to the team. And that was the reason after my 8th concussion, even though they wanted a letter from my neurologist, Randy did let me just go exclusively with track.
I remember that, yeah.
I had to go into the football office and work and send letters out to recruiters or whatever.
Yeah, lick envelopes.
Yeah, but at least they let me go. And so it was...
And keep your scholarship.
And keep the full scholarship, which was great. But then I had a year of eligibility left for track, and I had one class to take. And I'm like, guys, I can't pay money to run track now. I've been on full scholarship. You've had me for 2 years on football scholarship, but they just didn't have the money. The women, because of Title IX, do. But I think we had one scholarship, and Ray Wilkes, who was an incredible thrower, he had, I think, the majority.
Oh, for track. That's right.
So track didn't have the money to offer.
And football wouldn't keep you on.
No. And this is after Randy came in and told the other fifth-year guys, hey, you got your degree. That's what you're here for.
Oh, he sent them off.
Yeah, so I knew I wasn't getting the fifth-year, ride to run track. So,
but as far did you meet with him individually, like after spring ball?
Nope, I met with him.
He never had a one-on-one conversation with you.
The only one-on-one conversation I had was after Kentucky. Okay, and so that
was it.
So, and this is where, because, and I tell this story, it's wild, and you mentioned it in one of your podcasts before, but Darrell Bevel was our wide receiver coach, and at the time, I'm like, hey, if I'm not getting run at defensive back, could I play a little receiver? I'd go out and work with them pregame and all that. And so that's when I went in Randy and met him on Monday after Kentucky. He said, so you think you're a better coach than me? And I'm like, what?
Oh,
I thought he was bringing me in to talk about maybe playing some offense. And he's like, Coach Bevel says you think you should be a receiver. So you think you know more than me? And I'm like, Coach, that's not, I'm just saying.
No, you want to contribute.
Yeah, I want to be on the field. And then that's when he's like, you don't even work hard. And I'm like, what? I literally stood up, because my mom always told me, if somebody's talking to you, don't let them be an authority and stand over you. So like I stood up so that I'd be face to face versus him looking down on me sitting on his couch. And I just said, Coach, what do you mean? You've seen my time. There's no way I don't work hard. And then he brought in 2 other coaches. I think it wasn't Norris. It was specialty Coach Johnson.
Linden.
Yeah, Linden. He says, "Hey, does Laban work hard?" And now, is he going to say, "Oh yeah, he works
He
hard"?
can't go against that coach.
No. So I literally I kind of walked out of the room. That was on Monday. On Tuesday, kickoff drill, they send down a linebacker and blew me up for that was my 8th concussion. So
and that you think that was intentional?
yeah, I do.
That's sad.
Yeah, it was.
That's really sad.
But and I don't know. It just was way too.
That's wrong.
I don't think those drills you butt people up, and this dude just came. It was as if Randy said, "Hey, just go run that dude right over." And I don't have any animosity against. And I can't remember his name. I know who it was. Mike. I can't think of his name.
McIntosh.
That's exactly who it was.
It was
Mike
McIntosh, who was a walk-on.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I think. That's the thing with Randy is that I was there early on. I was the only one competing. I was there for winter workouts. Even when I ran the penalty, I ran it. I stayed. I was the only one left on the track. Everybody else rolled off. Like, he would not beat me. You know what I mean? And he knew that. He knew that even on that penalty run, like, I outkicked him. So
but you still wanted to earn his respect. You still wanted
everybody, right? It's like a father figure.
Yeah.
And then you find reasons why it's like, he's just an idiot. And then after he flies to Maryland right from the Fiesta Bowl, you realize,
oh my God.
Finally, people realize the guy that some of us actually knew, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that was sad. That was really sad when that happened.
Yeah.
So, after that concussion, talk to me a little bit about what you're dealing with, because, I know for me, when I lost football, stopped playing football, it becomes your identity. It becomes who you are. And I struggled with that. And I can't imagine you, who put so much time and effort into it. And now, you got 2 coaches saying, "Oh, you don't work hard." And they pull the plug. You're a regular student and you're not part of the team. And you're suffering concussion syndrome.
Yeah, I think the by far the most,
that must have been so hard to get
the
through.
most difficult thing was letting my teammates down, right? And that
you really felt that way?
Well, it just seems selfish because I felt like I was a contributor and helped the team in 97.
You did.
And so, like, the brotherhood is stronger than anything else. So
the camaraderie. Yep.
I'm letting guys down. And over the years, Jordan and Jamar have said, "Man, you're instrumental on the team."
You were.
But when you get that cut off, it's like, man, you feel like you're letting your brothers down. I'm not, it feels like you're quitting the sport, which, you're forced out, but you still struggle with that. And so between, the depression and then there's that anger issues. I think that was where I never realized how much anger. And when you play
had
football,
resentment,
that's your outlet, right?
Yeah.
You can do things on that football field that you can't do in society.
Yeah.
So that was my outlet. And when you don't have that, it makes it really tough to deal with. And
no, I can imagine.
And then you don't know, having the concussions and then all the studies that start to come out, and then you see the junior Seau, and then you start to see things that in your life where it's trending in that direction. And I think that's where you begin to say, "Hey, I got to find a solution for this," because it can go. You can get into a really dark place really quick.
Yeah,
and,
I know.
And even for me, just studying it was thrusting me in. You become what you think about. And so I had like when you say I have such a positive attitude, I have to be. You know what I mean? Like, it's part of the decision you get to make each day. What is my, how am I going to treat people? What's my outlook? And it's not easy some days.
It's not.
But I think when you reflect on what you've already been through, how you got through that, and if you need to reach out to a friend, a brother, that might just be the conversation you need to get you through it. And so I think for me, the personal struggles, I quell them by keeping my strong relationships even stronger, and
Right.
I think for the track team, when we lost, Kyle Milliken in action, he was a Navy SEAL Team 6 guy. And you start to realize that, man, life is too short, and we all get doing our own things and we lose those important relationships. I mean, we as humans, we feed off of that togetherness. And anybody who's been on an athletic team, especially at the level we were at, how important that is and how much even just one or two teammates can lift you out of things that, you felt like you might not be able to overcome. But when you had these guys in your trenches, and again, sports aren't everything, but man, do they teach you life lessons that'll get you through some hardships that you didn't necessarily realize you might come upon.
So, I mean, a concussions is significant. I mean, that is really significant. Were you diagnosed with like depression, anxiety, PTSD, panic disorder, bipolar, anything like that?
No, I mean it's all no, because
So
it's
that's
a thing
good.
where but I know kind of my affliction, if you will. I don't
Sure.
I don't I don't feel I need that diagnosis to know the things I'm challenged by. And I
Right.
also think if they put a label on it, it kind of becomes that, well, now I'm thinking that is what's coming about. So
Right.
it's an interesting thing because obviously it helps to know, but if you already kind of know, and so I don't need to be told specifically what my challenges will be in the future. I've done enough research to see,
Yeah.
and that's where what I have done is try
You're
to
being proactive.
exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
everything from, like, I do Tai Chi twice a week. I call it just another appointment. So if you call and want to see a house, I can't do it on Tuesdays or Thursdays between 10 and 11. I'll meet you at 11:30, but I need that time to focus on me, focus on my physical body, my mind. And so when you realize that has to be a part of your life, it just becomes, part of the system and the process that you live by.
But you never went to therapy, anything like that.
So I went to therapy, and going back to the anger issue, my wife
Yeah.
would say,
I'm
I
sure she provided a lot of support.
well, and she'd be like, "Hey, you got crazy eyes right now," and it
Yeah.
was I would get this welling in my chest to where I did see a therapist, and I don't remember the technique he used, but it was like they vibrated in your hands kind of back and forth, and he'd walk you back through your experiences. And I thought maybe it was a real estate broker, then I thought maybe it was Randy Edsel, and the guy kept rolling me back to where I wasn't getting that feeling until elementary school, a kid that was bullying me.
It
And
went back that far.
it went back that far, and it seemed so significant on the surface, but I mean, he was able to pull out that feeling in my chest where I wanted to run somebody over, and honestly, since that therapy session, which would have been 8 or 9 years ago, because my son is now 13, and that was the thing. It's like a 5-year-old kid I'm screaming at. And
Right.
so
Right.
I get
You don't
done
know
yelling, and
why.
I'm like, I can't handle this. Like, why in the world am I getting so upset about him dropping his, maple syrup on the ground? I can just wipe that up. But ever since that therapy session, I have not had that feeling of angst like I want to tear somebody's head off. Um,
Right.
so it
That's
helped me,
good.
and honestly, I have a business coach that I meet one on one. I just met with him on Friday. It's therapy. He knows it's somewhat therapy for me because I'm talking about, business, coaching, life, family, things like that. But if you don't get that outlet and you start then, and in the mind, especially with concussions, the paranoia, the thinking that, oh, they're thinking up, you can really get in your own way. And I think that's
Absolutely.
in your own head. I think you really start to um, just get just
You
that
question
overwhelmed that.
yourself, you get
Yeah,
overwhelmed. Yeah. I've
all of
been
that,
there.
all of it.
I had just talked to Chris Desitis
Oh yeah,
before we came on, and he was telling me how you built just an incredible, successful real estate business.
well,
And, that's amazing that you were able to do that. And you had the business savvy. and the psychology obviously helped. But what brought you into real estate?
It's funny. She just walked in the door. This is
I
my
see.
mother, Marsh. Hey, do you have a charger for me? Um, but really, my mother. And so when you go back to teams, and both my parents were the biggest of encouragers. That's not the right one. If you have another one, they always encouraged me and believed in the dreams. Right. So she was the one when in the story goes in '98. Right. That incredible season. My mother was working at my uncle's dentist office and wanted to come to the games. And, he wouldn't let her leave at noon so that we could see her in the hotel before we went to bed.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
she's like, you know what? I'm going to get my real estate license. So he did that in '98. And then when I moved home in '03, I saw the opportunity. And to your point with that degree in psychology, I'm like, we can do this with our own license, bring on new agents, and really start to build this thing. So
It's your own baby.
and
It's your business.
it was on the back of my mother's hard work and network of people where it was just a new team to work for, and that's where sports is so vital. That I can't be the quarterback and the receiver. You just can't. You need all those different roles, and then you need the humility to know what your role is, right? And I think that's where
So, but what made you go to Florida? What
never in
made you?
Florida. What do you mean?
You're, oh, Chris told me you were in Florida. Okay,
No,
so you're not in Florida.
nope, 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 not in Florida.
All right, he got that.
Well,
Maybe I misunderstood him.
my wife has her business down in Puerto Rico now. I mean, and
Oh
she
God, wow.
mortgage here in Erie, but yeah.
So
So
okay, so you're in PA.
so
Okay.
we're in PA still with it all, and but it's been great. And again, I think my experience with sports is what enabled us to put a team of agents together, and then it's just like we were talking about encouraging the athletes. I mean, that's what my
How many people work for you?
we have about 40 licensed agents. I'd
Oh
say
my
25
God.
of them are, really active in the market. Some of them are part-time. Um, but it's something where, again, I compare it more to pole vault, right? Because I don't have to call any pole vaulters and say, hey, you coming to practice today? Like, you have to be assertive. No parents are making kids pole vault. It's a tough, challenging sport. And so it's like real estate. I never call my agents and say, hey, are you coming in the office today?
You don't micromanage.
I don't like, no, I just, because part of, like, in my experience, that stuff stresses me out. And I just was talking to somebody about this on the military side of things. Like, I worked at the Coast Guard when I was in Connecticut working for the commercial roofing company. And I would be on campus, and that regiment, that militant style would stress me out. We
Yeah.
experienced it in
Yeah.
football. Like, if you're 2 minutes late, you're running
You're
laps.
done.
And
Yeah.
it's good for you in life, but it was so stringent that I had to get to the point where I'm like, hey, I can't take this. I need a more relaxed lifestyle. As much as I enjoy, having that structure, it was getting to the point where it stresses you out, and that you find the things that trigger your stress levels and your anxiety, and it's best to avoid them.
So, how is it? I mean, because you, you're a boss,
Yeah,
really. I mean,
yeah, and
so that's got to be tricky managing the different personalities, the different egos, having to tell someone if they're doing something wrong, having to make adjustments, and they take it personally and they resent you for it. How have you adjusted to being a boss?
so I think in
And
reflection
and
on,
your style, what would you say your style would be?
it is definitely more low key. As
Okay,
far,
good.
I think that intensity has its place in certain things, but so much of what we do in negotiation, especially, it has to be a win-win, or at least it has to feel like a win-win for both parties. And so
Correct.
it's talking through that, finding out what are we really doing this for? You know what I mean? And getting back and keeping that as the focus, and whether it's to make money or for a lifestyle thing. And so going back to like that DISC profile, understanding the people you're dealing with is half the battle. Because
Yeah.
if you don't know the personality type you're dealing with, you're probably not going to find the right solution for their needs. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're going to do what works best for you, but you have to kind of take on, and I say more of a chameleon role to put yourself in their shoes and understand what they're going through and why they might do that. Because there's times where, and everybody, especially when it comes to money, thinks of it differently, and so if I got the go ahead from my client who's got the money, who is willing to negotiate, I can be a lot more firm than somebody who's pinching pennies and this is the last they got. And so I know I have to handle that a little bit differently. So the psychology is, I mean, every day. And then I think I said this the other day, I was in a table tennis tournament, right? And I knew the guys that I were playing, like this was his first tournament, but, and I talk about this, I learned this in psychology, sports psychology at UConn. Get comfortable being
Being
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable.
If you're the most comfortable person in an uncomfortable situation, you're far more likely to succeed. And so I knew,
Right.
hey, as we get to the playoffs of table tennis, I've been in stressful situations. I'll be able to stay calm and relax. This guy's stressing out when he gets down by 2 points. So it's understanding that mentality and being in the right position. And hey, if I've got 2% left on my iPad, can I switch to a phone?
Go right ahead, brother.
I mean, how would I have the app on my phone? No. Oh, is that plugged in? 1 second. No, it's not plugged in the other way. Here. Oh, hold on. I can get on here.
How's he dealing with this situation?
Yeah, this is a good test, Steve. How in the world am I going to handle the situation? All right, into the studio. I'm going to get in, and will this be a seamless transition? Will they?
You just put the link that I gave you. If you can copy and paste it in the app, in the StreamYard guest app.
I love it. And so we're going to do this on the fly, and I'm going to make it work. Just because this is what we do, bro. You just kind of roll with it. You would think we plan this, but no, we just roll with it.
So with the you got it perfectly. With the concussions, what symptoms would you say you suffer from currently the most?
You got me now?
I got you.
All right, smooth transition. So, and I appreciate the question. And I've said on a number of occasions, and I've posted for guys, and they have days specifically for mental health and military and PTSD and stuff. But I have gotten to the point where I love a routine, right? And so that's where you have to find solutions to the challenges. And one of the biggest concerns I would get, like I have to do public speaking every now and again. And there's nothing worse than anybody who's had concussions will tell you. Like when you lose your train of thought, it is
Yeah, no, it's
you
scary.
like panic. You're
Yeah.
what was I just talking about? And it happens like even in interviews like this to where
So
I have just
memory.
it is, but it's focusing. Like my mother walking in as a distraction.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, that's not helping me out. But it's again focusing on what are the things that you need as solutions. Because if you just sit and say, well, I have trouble remembering things, you're gonna have trouble remembering things. So you have to just implement tools, solutions, and with whether it's apps, like Monday night at 10 p.m. in my phone, it's take the garbage out. And if I on Tuesday morning see that I forgot to take the can out, I mean it's stress. It's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
So I think and I stay so busy, and I've said
Which is
this like
good. Idle time is the worst.
it is. And when it makes you a better time manager. Like when people ask me how I played multiple
Organization. Yep.
sports, yeah, in college, it was like, well, I was just really good at time management. And I'm convinced the most successful people are the best at time management. And
Yes.
it doesn't matter what you do because we all get 24 hours.
There's
And
only 24 hours in a
I
day.
like 8 hours of sleep and I feel that it's vital. So what are you doing with the other 16? And
Exactly.
so I try to stay engaged. And honestly, like bad weather gets me a lot.
Because you don't want to stay inside.
It's and it just gives you that the claustrophobic feeling.
Yeah.
I'm by nature, I think I like to be out doing things, and that's where I
Right.
love real estate because it's something new every day, new clients. I just listed a commercial building, working with residential, so I need kind of that those different the change of pace. I like a routine, but I the mundane I can't do it. It just yeah.
Talk to me about your kids. How many kids you have?
Yeah. So we
What
have
are they into?
four children.
Oh, God bless you.
Yeah, our oldest is 16. Our youngest will be 6 in June. Um, and they're bookend girls, and our boys are 8 and 13. Um,
Okay.
and
What is
this is
bookend girl? What are bookend girls?
bookend girls, meaning the 16 and 6, and the boys are 8 and 13. So our girls
Oh,
are
I
the
got
oldest and
okay.
youngest, and then our boys are in
Gotcha.
the middle. But I tell you what, a 10-year of separation in girls, and the 16-year-old just started driving, and then the 6-year-old starts kindergarten next year, and it's like a,
That's a lot
a
to manage.
a picture into the future of the next 10 years. But it is by far the greatest challenge in life. I remember thinking, with that degree in psychology, each kid is its own psychological experiment. I mean, I'm a picky eater, and I think in part because of my concussions, it's a weird thing. But talk to people with concussions, they tend to have smell or taste issues,
Yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
all part of the brain and things. Um, but I was always told, "Oh, your kids are going to be terrible eaters." Well, three of my four kids eat the vegetables that I don't eat at hibachi. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so that's not always true. But I tell you what, these kids are they teach you so much as an adult. And as an athlete, when you become a coach, you realize how much better you would have been if you knew what you know through
Now,
coaching.
yeah.
And so it's very similar in parenting, and you don't know if you're getting it right. But the biggest compliment for me is when one of my adult peers says, "Oh, I ran into Mackenzie, your 16-year-old, and she looked me in the eyes, carried on a conversation." I
Which
mean,
kids can't do
it's amazing. And that is
this
where
generation.
it is very scary, and we talked a little bit about, right? I think we went from entitlement to audacious. Like,
Yeah.
kids are now audacious with what they think they deserve or need. And so I think even when you talk college athletics, Mackenzie, Meg and I both went to UConn, so she's a sophomore and has aspirations to potentially go to UConn. You can do it, but you are going to
Absolutely.
have to keep working your tail off, unlike anybody else. And I think that's what you start to realize. And what I realized being there is like, hey, there's some walk ons who, I mean, Kyle Milliken was a walk on to the track team. I mean, Jeff Larson, who I loved your interview with
Lars,
him,
love
and
Lars.
he threw me props. So I mean, but he was a walk on. And it's like these guys motivate those of us that maybe earned it. But what I started to realize is that any walk on can earn a scholarship with hard work and dedication.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where I gained so much more respect for people that they weren't even getting money, but they loved and were passionate about the sport and their teammates. Because I think that's what you start to find. And when we opened our organization, people would start coming in, and you build that right culture, and everybody wants to be a part of it. And I think
And
that's where, UConn right now is at its precipice of, where would you want to go to school in New England? I mean, basketball capital of the world, but it's becoming the sports capital. Like you said, soccer, field hockey, football. They're starting to dominate all over.
well, since you mentioned UConn, I'll ask you a little bit about UConn because I just talked to Chris DeCitis, and the success of basketball obviously is number one. UConn's a basketball school, and they have dominated the last 2 years, probably, two of the best teams ever. But as Chris said, the school, as far as the athletic department, they're still in the red. And I believe they have to join a conference in football. Now, my question to you, should they stay try to stay in the Big East in basketball and join a football conference for football only or football in the other sports? or should they leave the Big East in basketball and join, the Big 12 or the ACC in everything? What is the way to go, in your opinion?
So as a Big East athlete that had the chance to compete against Miami, Virginia Tech, West
BC,
Virginia, yeah,
Syracuse.
BC, exactly. I mean, I competed in the Carrier Dome for the Big East finals.
Yeah.
I mean, so to me, and I agree 100% because we are not Notre Dame. Notre Dame's the only independent school that can get away with it, and that's because their pockets are so deep. And yeah, football, I think at UConn tends to drag on the numbers, but you are right because once you get into TV contracts, all that other stuff,
Well, Rutgers gets $40 million and they go 5-7 every
and
year,
that's where
but they
Rutgers
need the
is.
money.
I know, and I think the ACC would be the best fit.
I agree.
As soon as you saw these guys like Virginia Tech and all these other guys roll, even a Maryland. I mean, we can compete with all of them, even in football. But you definitely have to get in a conference, and I don't know all that went down as to why not. But I mean, I was a part of the UConn track push to keep men's and women's track and field, and I think we lost cross country maybe. But that was that time where
They were
even
gonna.
Stanford cut like 10 other sports programs.
No, I know they did. I know they did because they just can't afford it, and they're taking a loss. And what drives me crazy is UConn should be desirable by
Yeah.
other conferences. Like UConn should be fielding offers and be able to pick and choose where they want to go. And I don't understand the hardship of why they can't find a home. And it's great that they're in the Big East in basketball, but if your department's not making money, and that affects all the other sports, like Chris was telling me, the baseball players, they get $12 per diem.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, and I don't understand what more it would take for them to get accepted back into a football conference. I mean, even if they don't get into a Power Five, go back to the AAC. Go
I
go.
mean, and I've talked about like I think, and I know it's a bit of a demotion, but like the MAC has some great programs. I
They
don't want
do.
to go down there. I think we need to be elevated to the
Yeah, I
ACC.
agree.
And so you don't want to take a step back, but I think being independent is
They're just
worse than
they can't get TV deals,
no, not
to
at
cover
all.
games. And Rensselaer Field during the from 2000 to 2010, they were rocking. I mean, there were
Yeah.
35,000, 40 plus every game. Now 15, 10, and it's just sad because we built that thing into something, and the culmination was 2010. They go to the Fiesta Bowl. Randy leaves on the plane after the game. I remember Chris sent me a text saying, "We don't know where Coach Edsel is," and
Yeah.
he just gave his assistants instructions to get the team home. Um, and then he makes the announcement on the plane.
Well, he makes the announcement of my dream job.
I was like, Maryland? Really?
But not only that, then he came in to Happy Valley and had his captains not shake hands with Penn State on the 50-yard line. And
After
again, that
the
was
after the
another
game,
instance
yeah.
where it's like, hey, this is what Randy Edsall's like. Who I mean, so little stuff like that, and I don't know why he did that or what brought about it, but again, it just does not give the impression of a good look.
I had him on the podcast, and I asked him about all that, and it was just surprising to hear like he legitimately defended that Maryland was his dream job. He said that they used to go to Maryland games, like he wanted to coach at Maryland. I was like, and then I also asked him like, how close were you to going to Syracuse? Because I know he flirted with Syracuse a couple times,
Yeah,
and
but
he said he was close once.
well,
But
as close as his one pass as a quarterback, which became an
Interception. I know.
So that's why he didn't go back to Syracuse, in my opinion. No, I mean, and I think even that, right? When you look at that, because I remember he came from Jacksonville under Tom Coughlin, like, so we had such high hopes. He was a PA guy,
But
and then you get into
he never
meetings and
had
he starts
coordinator experience. That's the
never.
other thing.
No.
I asked him about that. I said, "Were you nervous coming in because the 1 year of coordinator experience he had was the year at Georgia Tech before he came to UConn.
Yeah.
He had never been a coordinator. He was a quarterbacks guy. He was a DBs guy. And now you're a head coach. I mean, that is a huge transition."
Well,
So it just blew my mind. And then I gave him credit because he comes in, he's 40 years old, and obviously Lou Perkins was the Don,
yeah, he
but
was.
they get the stadium built. And then he gets the football facilities building. It's the only indoor football facilities building in the Northeast. He gets that done in 2005. So to raise money, and obviously Burton
Well,
had
I
a
was just
lot to
gonna
do with
say, I
that.
mean, Mike, but
Mike,
you gotta give credit to Burton and the fact that he was in there with us. I think I remember when they hired Pasqualoni afterwards, the Burtons were also a little frustrated because
well, he
Mike's
wanted his
younger
money
brother
back.
played for them. Yeah.
Yeah, he wanted his money back.
Yeah.
Um, that wasn't a great hire. They
No.
should have went with a younger guy. But Randy accomplishing that, I thought was incredible, because that's very difficult to do, especially at a basketball school, to raise that kind of money. And you got a stadium, you got a football facilities built, and then I think from what he said, the main reason he left was he did not get along with Hathaway, the athletic director.
Yeah.
Hathaway was making things difficult on him, and he didn't see long-term success. And I don't want to say that he gave up, because that's just terrible to say that he gave up. But I just think he lost hope,
Yeah.
stopped believing. And it's sad. And then he comes back, and it's a dumpster fire.
Yeah, that I will never be able to understand. I mean, you knew what he was, what he did, and I mean that was at a pivotal time where we need. I think it was Diaco, who I was excited about because
Oh,
he's defensive coordinator from Notre Dame.
yeah, and
That
Diaco was a mess.
and well, because they all became, now it's a state school, and now
Yep.
you're on the hook for these contracts. And so, how many coaches are you paying, and they're not even coaching?
And that's why the state went into a deficit.
Yeah,
You're 100% right,
yeah.
because they were paying out all those contracts after, Coach P, and then, that TJ Weiss came in as the interim coach, and you're going through staffs. and
Well,
and Randy always complained when he came back, he didn't have the money to hire a good staff, the
that's
coordinators that he wanted. He said
that's
that
why he
his hands
settled
were
for
tied.
nepotism with his tight end coach. I mean, and even that became an issue, like with the state that
Oh my
hey,
God.
you hired your son as the tight end coach, and there's just different rules. So
Laban,
and
I can
again,
tell you about his son.
oh
I was a college football coach.
yeah, that's right, Holy Cross.
I coached at Holy Cross, and Cody was starting out. He was a GA at Colorado State, and he was looking for a job. And he was a defensive guy, and he wanted to interview at Holy Cross. I couldn't get him an interview. Randy gets hired. I was hoping Randy would hire me, but
Yeah.
he didn't want to hire me. But he asked me to kind of help Cody out, and with tight end and offensive line play. And I was like, all right, I'll do my best. And I met with him,
Yeah.
and he's just a weird dude. Um, I gave him my manual for offensive line and tight end stuff
Yeah.
so he could learn it,
Yeah.
and he just didn't get it. I know he's at Stanford now. I know he's an analyst, and Randy's really proud of him, and I think he's doing better.
Yeah.
But he just man, I just rubbed me kind of the wrong way, and it wasn't the right place for him, and to put him there, you caused a state investigation, cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And honestly, nepotism happens everywhere. I mean,
It does.
Belichick had his kids on staff. Saban has his kid on staff. I mean, they all hire their kids.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand why the state took it to the level that they did. But Cody was just a different cat. He was a
Yeah.
different cat. Um, and I got to spend some time with him. But
Yeah.
it's
And
just amazing. And do you coach your kids?
so I do, and I'll tell you,
Okay.
I coach the pole vault, and my daughter is a vaulter, and I mean, it is a whole new dynamic.
That's what I was gonna
Um,
say because the kids are sensitive and they're I got mad because my co-host, he has a son who's 6'9"
wow.
and a good basketball player. He played as a freshman and as a sophomore, and this junior year was going to be his year. He was going to be a starter. He was going to be, a superstar. And it ended up being just an awful, awful year because the coach was an old school guy. He was a yeller and a screamer and really gruff. And I'm like, you got this kid. Now, the kid didn't love basketball. I know he
Okay.
played basketball because of his parents,
Yeah.
but you can cultivate that. You, you, you motivate him. Once the kid experiences success, he's going to start to like it, and he'll eventually start to love the sport. And you have a once in a lifetime talent. You can't teach 6'9".
Right. Exactly. And it's the same with speed. You know, like
Yeah,
you can teach speed a little bit, but when you have speed, that needs to be exploited. I don't care if it's basketball, football, track and field. There's certain qualities that if you have, and to your point, like even in the pole vault, if I have height,
I
it's
can't
all
even
about
imagine
physics.
that.
I want to
Yeah,
stand the pole up as quickly as possible. So if you're 6'9" and you started here versus six, even, you have an advantage. So, but and that is the most frustrating thing to me as a coach is
yes,
when I'll talk to parents and this is what I hear. The coach that took the love away from my kid was. And it's like, how do we have coaches that are taking the love of sports
that's what
away from
drives me
kids?
nuts. Drives me
It
nuts.
absolutely does. And the old saying, people don't know that you don't care what you know until they know that you care. In sports, that is everything. I don't care if you are the best X's and O's guys. If you just scream and yell every time I make a mistake, I'm shutting it down.
Yeah, you're
But
not
if
going to
I know you put
respond.
your arm around me and say, "Hey, we'll get the next one," go get it. I'm in your corner, dude. You empower people in a way that I'll run through a brick wall for Nick Rapone because I know
Absolutely.
and I don't know this, but I feel that he would have run through a brick wall for me. That's that
Yeah,
law of reciprocity, and so
absolutely.
respect is earned, not given. And you got to let these kids know that I might know the technical aspects of the pole vault, but even if you have a bad day, I love you unconditionally and we will get better the next time we come out. That's what people want. They
Yeah.
want to know that they have a safety net, right? And again, we are not in the 50s and 60s where you can scream and yell and, oh, my dad never hugged me, my dad never loved me. I mean, dude, people need it. I don't care if you're a tough, strong guy when you can be real, because that's all it is being real. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, because we all know in our own head and in our mind where it goes. But if you can pull out the best in people, and sincerely do it, right? And that's what I'm saying. Not just a hype man to blow smoke. If I see that you have skill, talent, and you have potential, you got to pour into that to people and let them know that you can do whatever you want. And
You can
going
be
back to
something
that mentor,
special. Yeah.
when my coach was interviewed by a TV and they're like, "What do you think about Laban?" He's like, he can do whatever he wants. And he said that kind of nonchalant, but I knew he meant that.
He believed
Whether I
it.
went to
Yeah.
school for track and field or football, he was confident that I could. And so now that gave me the confidence. I don't care what some of these other coaches, the coach who I believe in believes I can do it. And so that's who I'm going to go do it for. And that's what we need to be as coaches, as parents, to these other kids. And I love it. And I've had a few people say, like, when I post videos of my kids, I often post to some of their teammates, if they make a nice shot that my son passed them to. And I've had people come up and I love how you share other kids' successes too. And it's like, well, I could make a ESPN highlight film of just
Sure.
my kids, but part of what I love about my kids is that they're good teammates.
Right.
Like, kids want to be teammates with them, and their leaders. Like, just yesterday they had a track meet. My 13-year-old son had a track meet, and their 4x1 team, one of their kids had in-school suspension, and so they were just going to shut it down. And the coach came up to me and said, "Hey, I just want to tell you, your son, when he found out the fourth leg wasn't available,
He
the other two guys wanted to quit, and he says, no, let's just put Jared back in. We'll do the best we can and make it happen." So when that coach came up to me and just said, "Hey, I was really proud of your son, and I wanted to tell you that he stepped up as a
he
leader
took
and just said,
charge.
we
Yeah.
might not be as good as we were with Chase, but let Jared fill in and we get to run the race." So, like I told you, those are the things that, as a parent, as a coach, when you hear it from a third party saying, "Man, that's the type of kid that I want my kids to follow," that's when you're on the right track. Do you know what I mean?
Do you coach high school? Is it
I
high
do.
school? That's
I coach.
awesome.
I
That's
do,
awesome.
and I'm very fortunate that, I mean, the girl at UConn who I coached in high school, still she'll send me videos during competition to
Right.
help coach and critique. So the fact that she
She
has that
still
level
asks
of
for your
trust,
input.
I mean,
That's
it's
so huge.
it's so rewarding. And
It is that you built that
yesterday,
relationship.
yeah, she texted me yesterday because they were at Villanova for the Big East finals and they had to move it indoors. And the facility wasn't what she thought. And I said, "Hey, you just got to focus on what you need to do. Don't worry about these outside elements." And she ended up making her third attempt at, I think it was 12 feet 3 inches, to win the Big East championship. I mean, there's just no better feeling as a coach or as a parent to see, your pupils succeed in a way, especially with adversity. Third attempt, and she knows, like we've talked about it, she's thinking about Coach Sanford, who on a third attempt, we got to make it. We got to make it. It doesn't even enter your mind, "Hey, can't miss it. Don't miss this third attempt." It's a
No, we're gonna hit
mentality
it.
and a psychology. And in fact, one of my coaches, we had a kid clear a third attempt, and she's like, "Oh, I was nervous." And I looked at her, I said, "Sincerely, I wasn't nervous at all. Like, we have three attempts. We're just gonna go make it." Like, you
Yeah.
have to believe, almost, yeah, like, okay,
You gotta
probability,
have
you
that
might not. You
confidence.
have
Yeah.
to. And
You gotta
even
have
if it
that
doesn't go
confidence.
your way, it's a 0% chance if you don't think you can do it. Zero.
That's
It's kind of like
amazing.
leaving a putt short. You have
Yeah.
0% chance leaving a putt short. But if you go for it and it rolls off at least you got it there and gave yourself a chance. Be
That's
in it.
amazing. That's amazing. It's amazing that you still have that relationship with the girl who won the Big East. That she's sending you videos. She's communicating with you. She wants your input. She trusts your input because you've earned that trust.
And
You
I tell
know,
people in real estate all the time, I appreciate your trust and confidence in me to take care of this for you. Because that's a big thing. And a lot of times we take it for granted. Do you know what I mean?
we do.
Um,
We do.
we really do. And it's vital. And I think, again, those relationships, because in real estate, we say it's a transactional business, but it's a relationship business, because I don't want to just do one deal. I want to do this deal and you had so much enjoyment and
That
success
you
with it
continue to
that when
work
you
with
go to
you.
talk to somebody, you rave,
Yeah.
and there's Raving
Word of
Fans is a great book.
word of
You know what I mean?
mouth.
Like, Yeah, that's spread it like wildfire. And at the same time, you can do 10 great deeds and a few people will recognize it, but you do one bad and everybody is sure to know. And
Let me
that's
ask
where
you, as a coach, dealing with parents.
hmm,
What's your policy with dealing with parents? Do you have an open door policy where you'll talk to anyone? Do you have a policy where if they're texting you at 10 o'clock at night, you're not going to respond to them? How do you deal with parents? Because that to me, I've seen parents, the helicopter parents. I've seen parents that think that they have full access to coaches and to tell them how to do their job. So I'm curious because you have a different philosophy, how you handle parents.
yeah, I love that. And I think I love the challenge of it. And because in real estate we negotiate,
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of put it back on them like, okay, well,
What do you?
what of the top three, who do you think your child should jump in front of? Like, and why? Give me the reasoning. And honestly, it was these guys in Connecticut who would say to me, repeat back to people what they just said so they can hear how stupid they sound. And I don't
That's
mean
a
that
great.
insult.
That's a
I
great
don't mean it
advice.
insulting, but it's the
That's
sort of thing where, so wait, you want me to put your child in front of these other three who have been here, perform better, and everything else? Is that right? And it's as if they don't hear what they're saying. And so when you
right.
repeat it back to them, it's like, yeah, I guess that does sound kind of foolish that I would think you'd implement my child in front of these who have done exceedingly
Yeah.
well,
It's because
so
they're acting
I
on
do.
emotion and not thinking of the best for the
Yeah.
team.
And I think, and I've said the same thing in real estate though. Like if you come into my office with a problem, my agents know they better have two solutions.
Right.
I'll help you come up with one, but you have better churn this for a solution before you just come and tell me the problem. Because
Right.
that's what most people bring to you is the problem. And the other thing I often say is criticism rarely comes from people better than you. Right? So like for coaching, when you have these parents that are criticizing you,
Right.
it's like, hey, I'd be happy to take you on as an assistant. Come
Yeah.
on. And it's the same thing. They don't want to do it. And so
Right.
as soon as you give them the opportunity to share their feelings and then you give them your reasoning, it's really hard to deny. So I always welcome open door policy for our agents, for our parents,
You like
even for our students.
collaboration. Yeah.
I think it's vital because you're going
Yeah.
to deal with it in life too.
Yeah. Yeah. You
And
you
if
are.
you can come up with a good enough reason, then I'm okay with it. But a lot of times people don't want that interaction because hey, I'm the authority. You're just going to do as I say. I never mind it. And there are some audacious questions, and I'll tell people, hey, I appreciate you asking me that, but this is why
Yeah.
the answer is absolutely no.
Right.
So I think when you're confident in what you know, it you're I'm very transparent. Like you could come to any one of my
Well,
practices.
yeah. You're
Sometimes,
direct. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
sometimes I put them on Facebook Live because I will say the same thing to your kid if you're standing there or if you're not. It's just the way I am. I'm not going to curse at them. I'm
Right.
not, you know what I mean? I'm not going to belittle them because there's a lot of times, even for my kids, where they'll come back and say, "Oh, this is what coach said to me," and I'm like, "There's no way you would have said that with me standing there." And
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
that's
That's a
not
good
okay for
policy.
it's not okay for a coach. If you
Yeah.
wouldn't say
I
it in
agree
front of
with
their
you.
parents, don't say it to them. And so
That's
there's
really.
a lot of games that go on. And again, between my experience with Randy Edsel, experience with other people in business, I have actually told my kids, we used to hear you have to respect the elders. I do not tell my kids that.
You have
Respect
to give
those who
respect
show
to
you
get
respect.
respect. Yeah.
And if you're an
That's how
adult,
I
as I
feel.
am now,
Yeah.
I don't expect kids to just give me respect because I'm older than them. I
No.
have to show them that I respect their opinion, their perspective. It may be skewed,
You
and
have
I'm
to
going to
earn
show
it.
you why it's so skewed.
Yeah.
But I'm never afraid for somebody to come out and, like I've had people ask questions where it's like, I can't believe they're so audacious. It's like, I don't mind you asking, but understand, I'm not afraid to say no implicitly. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're
Yeah.
willing to, and that was the other thing,
You
those
can't
same
be a
guys in
people
Connecticut.
pleaser.
No, but if you're going to ask that audacious request of me,
Yeah.
can I bring back that same level of audacity in my answer? Why do you get offended? I should
Yeah.
be offended by your audacious
Yeah.
request. So
Absolutely.
when you kind of go to blow, and that was like the same thing with Randy when he stood up and I'm on his couch and he's telling me I don't work hard. I stood up because I'm not. It's part of negotiations. I'm not going to let you stand over me and make me feel inferior. So
Well,
my
that's such
mother,
a memorable, powerful moment that it seems to have defined you and
yeah,
has stayed with you
yeah,
throughout
like
your entire life. Like you
yes,
remember that
oh
probably word for word. You could probably describe everything about the room. You could
yeah,
probably describe everything about the meeting. Like
yeah,
that moment, that impact really changed the course of where you may have been going
yeah,
and
yeah.
changed you as a person,
100%. I mean,
which is
it made me,
amazing.
and even my mom, because like I was talking to them, my parents, how the struggle was. They were at Kentucky to watch me play at Kentucky,
Yeah.
and I didn't get as much time as I would have liked. And they knew I wanted to talk to Coach Bevel about playing wide receiver. And so when they're like, we're gonna pray for you while you're in there, but you know what you need to do. And I knew that when he started criticizing me, I needed to stand up for
Yeah.
myself.
Yep.
And now, if you would have told me a year earlier, this is what you're going to have to do, I'm like, I'd rather not meet with him. I don't, I avoidance, right? A lot of us just avoid it.
We
And
do.
so when you start to run head into those uncomfortable
We have
situations,
to communicate. Absolutely.
it's key. And again, it might not be the stuff you want to hear, but he didn't even I was so upset I couldn't even argue back. Like, okay, I don't work hard, but I was able to jump 40.5-inch vertical, and I ran a 4.32 on the
Well,
pro day. How's that
your
correlate to
ex-
not working hard?
your
He just
example
crits.
your example argued back. Your experience argued back. Your performance was your argument back.
Yeah.
You had already showed that you worked hard.
And that
You led
was
by example. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say.
And I think that's where I lost respect for him because he talked and talked and talked like he was, and then he didn't follow up. He was, he let, in fact, I think it was Taxi, our fullback, when we were down, didn't have a fullback. And he's like, no, if you do something wrong, I won't play you. And we didn't have a fullback, and he was out on a Thursday or Friday night, and he still let him play that Saturday. So you're not a man of your word. It's out the door. As soon as you do it once and you don't follow up on what you say, I don't have respect for you. And that was that moment where you can say whatever you want, but now you're making up story. You're not being honest. You're trying to just criticize me by saying I don't work hard when you know full well to get where I'm at, it would have required hard work.
So, your wife has some real estate in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
You guys have your real estate company in Pennsylvania. You're
Yep.
in Erie.
Erie. Yeah.
Okay, you're in Erie.
Lake Erie,
That's
baby.
incredible. You have 4 kids,
Yes.
all athletes.
That they're all predisposed to some athletic genes.
Good.
My wife's father-in-law is in Virginia Tech's Hall of Fame for basketball,
Oh, wow. I didn't know
and
that.
her grandfather is in Lehigh's Hall of Fame for football, baseball, and basketball. He was a captain in the 30s. So as
It's in
much
your
as
blood.
I like to think I'm providing my kids some of the skills, I know that my better
Well,
half
she
and my
she
wife
she
also
she was
also
incredible as well.
contributed
Yeah.
substantially. So our kid, but here's the other thing, Steve. I don't care what your pedigree is. If you have the wrong attitude and you don't have a work ethic, your pedigree is worthless. It is worthless. And
Well, it's
here's the other
wasted
thing.
potential. So there's so much
And
wasted potential.
exactly. And again, uncoachable kids are unemployable in business. And so that's where, for me, I want my kids to be successful. But more than that, I want them to be good leaders in the community, on their teams. And so, yes, that usually comes by being successful, but the success comes after you put in the hard work, not before. And people can't delay gratification anymore. They want to be superstars when you just
Everyone
picked up a
wants instant
ball.
gratification. But
Right?
I love that when kids come to you, when they leave better. You've
I hope
made them
so.
better.
I hope so.
They're
And I
better
think,
off.
going to your point, like, I think the most rewarding thing is that every single one of the kids I've coached knows that they can reach out to me via text message, give me a
And you'll
call,
always be there
and I will always be there.
because
And I
you care
mean,
about them as people.
and far, yeah, and I think their commitment to the sport is like the icing on the cake. I mean, these kids, and there's so many kids with so much potential, and when I know how much influence my coaches had, good, bad, or indifferent, it enforces it in me to be the best I can, because I want my kids to talk about me the way I hold esteem for my coach. And like literally, I was in the car with him on Monday going to
Yeah.
get it was the most glorious 3 hours that I could have. I mean, get in front of some of these mentors. They want to share their knowledge, and I just eat it up. I mean, I try to get around him as much as possible, and it's what feeds me to go out and spread that same excitement for life and
No,
joy and
I love it.
opportunity.
Your energy, and what really stands out is your passion. You have passion with everything you do, whether it's real estate, whether it's coaching, whether it's being a father, whether it's being a husband. Having that passion really makes a difference because people don't. So many people in
It's
life
phenomenal.
go through, like you said, they're comfortable. They don't
Yeah,
want to take that chance being uncomfortable. And you having that passion and love of life and everything that you've overcome, and with the concussions, and you have managed to deal with that, you know what needs to be done. You know that you need structure. You
yeah,
know that certain things are going to trigger you, certain things aren't, but you have the awareness. And I think that's really what has made the difference, the passion and having such awareness of where you are in life.
man.
And that's led to you being I mean, you I it's so good. I wasn't buddies and super close with you in college, but it's so good and rewarding to see you happy, healthy, proud, and having a family and successful with kids.
Well,
That's
thank
so
you.
good. That is so
Thank you.
good.
Well, and again, I think to that point of, you don't often talk about the things that you have to overcome, but we all know people have, and I know people have it a lot worse off than I do, and
Sure.
the cards you're dealt. But I think that's where it's so important to be willing to give back, whether it's to the
Yep.
sport, the coaches, the kids. Um, but man, there's so many times in like there's seasons of life, right? I mean, there's seasons in a year, but the seasons of life where there's times you're trying to grow your business, there's times you're trying to button it up. I mean, these
Oh
seasons
yeah,
of
real
life,
estate's tough. I know. I know
well,
that for sure.
but it's one of those things where you're going to have seasons of hardship.
Absolutely.
But these seasons
It's
all
cyclical.
change. And
Yeah.
as an athlete, staying persistent, fighting the good fight will get you to those better days.
It
And
all
so I think
relates.
it's all trying to stay positive. And again, sometimes, Steve, you got to fake it till you make it. I
You
don't know
do.
there's a lot of
You
people
do.
that, whether it's social media and they make it seem like everything's going well, we all have our challenges. But if you're humble enough to reach out and say, "Hey, I need help here," I'm struggling, and sometimes it's financially, sometimes it's emotionally, but I think being willing to be there is what we all learned in athletics. And then you have so many people that think you should be able to do it on your own. It's like, yeah, I never did though. I always had teammates.
No, we always
So
had a connection.
yeah, and I think that's where, to your point, you do have to find mentors. Like I still have a business coach because coaching's that important, and
And you want to keep getting better.
I do, and I know I've
And
got
you want to
so
keep
much to
learning.
learn.
Yeah.
And in Tai Chi, if they say if you ever have an instructor that says they know everything, walk out the door. Anybody, because any Tai Chi master will tell you they don't know anything and they have so much to learn. And we all do. We all have so much to learn. If you have anybody that's got it all,
If you
get out
if
of
you
that
if you have
room.
all the answers and have it all figured out,
Man, no
I'd love
way.
to meet you.
No, I don't. I don't.
No, I know,
That's
right?
scary. You know what I mean? But you're right, and that's where um, we are by human nature. We need each other, and I
We
think
do.
for me, my passion and excitement is just knowing that I've had instances where it can be cut short, and we don't know that,
No, it can. It
the
can.
timing of it. But if you live, and we said that, right? Play like it's your last play ever. Well, I don't know why we're
That
not living
was
life like that.
Randy's. Yep. Play every
Yeah,
play like it's the last play you're ever going to play. You're
and
right.
you
You
don't
should
know
live
when
by
it
that.
will be.
You
You
don't.
just don't know.
What is the actual name of your business?
So we named the business after my mother, who
Okay.
now my mother married in, her name was Marcia Hammerly, Marsha, and she married my father, Greg Marsh. So it's Marcia Marsh, which marketing wise, you can't come up with a better name. And
It'll always be
it,
remembered.
yeah, and if you know the
It'll
Brady
stand out.
bunch, right? The Brady bunch, the
Yep.
two oldest were Greg and Marcia, which are my parents' name. And then they had four boys, Lucas, Laban, Levi, and Lamech. So
Wow.
this was the late 70s, very Brady type family.
So it's a
Um,
family business.
it's a family business. I'm partners with my younger brother, my mom
That's
and dad.
awesome.
And so, like right now, we've been in business 16 years. So we're starting to work on succession planning, where our older brother's now licensed. We're likely to bring him into ownership as we move my parents along. And that has brought a lot of emotional
Do you
challenges
do
and
you
things.
see them wanting to, I don't want to say the word retire, but
They
retire? They won't
No, my
retire.
parents will never retire. My father does all of our
He loves it.
photography. He
Yeah.
loves, and I mean, he just, because he does all the photography for our homes, but then he does the photography for sports and our
Oh,
kids. Oh
wow.
man, it's
So
so,
that's rewarding too.
yeah. And then my mother, like, she was just in here. It's what, Saturday afternoon, and she's writing an offer. She doesn't stop. And what's great is that she's our top salesperson. She would want nothing to do with what I have to do as broker in,
Right.
the
Yeah.
meetings, the running the offices, all that sort of
So
stuff.
you
She's a
all
top
have different
salesperson.
roles
We all have different roles.
and
My
you don't
brother Levi,
micromanage.
and right, we don't have to micromanage when you have the trust and confidence in each other that they're doing. It's just like in the right, dude. If you had to worry about what the tight end was doing every time, you wouldn't do your job, right?
Correct.
I mean, now
Absolutely.
you know what the tight end's supposed to be doing, so I know what Levi and my mom are supposed to be doing. And when we meet, it's like, hey, you took care of that, right? Perfect. I mean, you're doing your assignment, and then mind your own business.
Yep.
Like, why are you so worried about what everybody? And this is the biggest thing as a parent with
Don't
kids.
gossip. Yep.
Oh my gosh. Hey, well, Drew got
Drama.
to do this. Okay, well, Drew had this. Don't worry about Drew. Mind your own business. And
Right.
that's in life. I mean, that
No,
would be
I
a
hear you.
huge, huge thing.
So it's Marsha Marsh Real Estate.
Yeah.
That's the company.
Yes.
Very successful. Erie, Pennsylvania. And what school do you coach at?
So I coach at Fort LaBeouf High School
Fort LaBeouf
now.
High School. Fort
Fort
LaBeouf
LaBeouf.
High School track. 4 kids.
Yeah.
Um, this was awesome. Laban Marsh.
Hey, I
I
mean,
learned a lot.
well,
I learned
thank
a
you.
lot.
But I tell you what, it has been such a pleasure. I mean, I've been watching your podcast. When you interviewed Maria Conlon, my wife, her 5th year, she was a field hockey player, and she lived with Jessica Moore, Ashley Battle, and Maria Conlon. So,
Wow.
yeah, Meg lived with the girls from the national championship team. And, so Diana Taurasi and Sue Bird would be hanging out in their
Yeah.
room when I'd go visit. And it was pretty cool. But that was the best part about UConn. It didn't matter what sport you played,
No,
lacrosse, soccer.
we
We all
all got
hung out.
along. We were all
Yeah,
family. Yeah.
for
And yeah,
sure.
and Maria and I actually started our own podcast.
Is
We
that right?
yeah, we just put an episode up. She had so much fun, like you.
Yeah.
She had so much fun doing it. She's like, "Can
Let's
we do
do
a
more.
podcast?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll do a podcast with you." So
That's awesome.
we did our first podcast last week, and we'll record again on Monday. But yeah, no, I love doing this and getting to know you guys, and your generation especially because you were the older ones when I came in. I definitely want to get Nicky the Fish on. So
Yeah.
talk to him.
Yeah.
Talk to
I
Nicky the
will.
Fish if Nikki the Fish will come on, maybe I'll do something with you and him. We'll have you
Oh,
and
that'd be
Nikki the Fish
great.
on. You guys can tell
Well,
some stories.
between the two of us, because he wore a pro cap also.
He
So
did. I
our
know. I remember.
room, they put bubble wrap in our room basically, so we didn't bang off stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be that would be fun. But yeah, and I'm gonna keep reaching out to other guys, and this has been awesome. This has been
Well,
awesome.
stay in touch because I know, like,
I know I
a
will,
lot of the
man.
guys in your episodes, guys like
I'm
Smoot
glad you
and
listened. Thank you for listening.
I mean, well, it's been great because, like you, I love to hear these stories, and we don't always know the background. When we get to college, you don't know. Like I had no
You don't know
idea
who ended
what
up.
Larson had gone through as far as talking to his dad and coming to UConn. I didn't know his uncle's a senator or something.
Yep.
Like, I mean, those
Still
are the
is a
things where
congressman. Yep.
yeah, and a congressman. And when you're teenagers, you don't think about the big picture. And this is where I'm telling my kids, hey, these teammates could be business partners down the road. Or, I've got guys that I need for HVAC, electrician, heating, all the different things that play into real estate. It's all
Well,
relationships.
it's good that, like, I think the majority of us have turned out well.
Yeah.
We've been successful, and we have families, we have careers, and that's remarkable. And UConn, I had Tommy Collins on the episode I had Tommy and Jamar on. They were instrumental in getting NIL deals started
Yeah.
for UConn athletes, so they can start bringing in some talent for football and get that going. Just Tommy being on the forefront of that and getting the money together to do that. They did. We got a good group. We got a good group.
Yeah. And I think that's where, to your point, and what I think you're doing by connecting us all is reminding us what a great group we have. And if you need a specialist in some area, it's like I don't know
We got it.
everything,
Yeah.
but I'd be happy to answer anyone's questions, whether it's about real estate, whether it's about coaching. When LeVar Arrington gave me a shout out on his two pros and a cup of Joe about the pole vault, I had people reaching out to me. I'm like, what happened?
Yeah.
But I mean, like when he thinks of the pole vault and thinks of me, that's pretty cool. You know what I mean? So you don't realize what type of influence you might have had on people, but that connection that you're bringing to so
No.
many of us with the Husky Talk, and I mean, so many of us, it was pivotal in our lives. I mean, it's where I met my wife. I learned so many life lessons. I met so many great people
It's
that I
so much fun.
still stay
Yeah.
in touch with now.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, podcasting, it's, we're in the middle of a podcast craze. So it's very,
Yeah.
very difficult to build an audience. It's very, very difficult to stand out. So Tommy's idea was to do this, to have a UConn alumni podcast where you talk to UConn alums, let them tell their story, ask them about the team. And that grew my podcast from, I was averaging about 25,000 listeners per episode. I'm up to about 100,000 listeners per episode.
Wow.
And
I hope I don't drop your numbers with this most
I
recent
know
one.
you are going to blow up my numbers because you had a lot, to say and a lot of good things to say. So I'm very happy with that.
Man.
Laban Marsh, the man. I'll give you the last word. Anything else you want to say before we sign off?
I just want to say thank you to you.
Oh, don't thank me,
Honestly,
please.
because it's you're putting yourself out there in a way to be vulnerable that most people, and this is where I get it with real estate investing. Everybody wants to do it, but then nobody takes the steps to actually do it. It's like they talk the talk, and I love Phil Hunt. Don't talk about it, be about it.
Phil Hunt wants to come on. I got to have
Get
Phil
him
Hunt
on.
on. Yeah,
I mean, dude, he was
he
my
reached
big
out to me.
brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was my big brother when I got there. And I mean, there's just so many of these guys that were so impactful that believed in you
Yep.
that, so I love the brotherhood. I'm so thankful for my opportunities up there, the people I got to meet, and even the Randy Edsel, of the world who are going to challenge you and aren't
Well,
going to support you.
I
But you got to still battle through that.
he changed your life.
He-
That moment changed who you
Yeah.
were as a person. you stood up for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you became a man. I
Well,
think
and
you
I
became a
think
man.
it did, because I could have easily just walked out and
I
not
would have
said
cried.
what I wanted to say. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I was, but it's just like when somebody that you hold in esteem disappoints you, it just changes that perspective, and you can
Yeah.
either use it as fuel and motivation.
Which you did.
Because let me tell you something, when I was still on football scholarship running track, I can't tell you how bad I wanted to put that 60-meter dash medal around Edsel's neck.
Yeah.
You know what I
And let them
mean?
know.
Like, and at the time, like, I didn't know Willis McGahee he would be what he was, or Philip
Yeah.
Buchanan, or Andre Johnson. You know what I mean? These were just college guys like me. And in fact, the worst, I didn't get to run Santana head to head in the finals on Sunday, because Saturday night they all went out partying in Syracuse. So we show up to the finals on Sunday morning
Oh
with an
my
8-lane
God.
track and 4 lanes are empty, because Santana, Clinton Portis,
They were
Philip
all,
Buchanan, they all went out on
because they
Saturday
didn't
night,
take it
and
seriously.
they didn't
Yeah.
take it seriously. And so their coach wouldn't let them run the finals. So even though I missed Santana's record by 100th of a second, I never got to run him head to head. I ran Buchanan, I ran McGahee and Johnson, but it was just the time, which is the best part about track and field, because you can tell me you're fast, but what was your time? And
That,
if your
that
time wasn't
that's
faster than
all it
my
is.
time,
That's all the numbers.
yeah, I don't care what your last name is. I don't care how much I like you. If you're faster numbers, then that's who's going.
That's a great way to sign off. The
Yeah, well,
numbers
thank
say
you,
it all.
Steve. You're amazing, brother. You are
I appreciate
amazing.
it.
The brotherhood is real. You know, I like to end things with family on three, because we used to break it down that way. 1, 2, 3, family.
Family, absolutely.
And man,
We'll keep it going.
there you go, bro. Right?
All right. And my close. Just remember, when life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Take 2 oranges and throw them back at life.